Hi friends, it's Jeffy G here, and here, and here, but not here. I created a video on my Roland XP 30 explaining why I still have one in the year 2022, and that video attracted a lot of views. I had no idea that these late 90s ROMplers from Roland were so popular, that so many people, shared my admiration. I don't use it a lot, so that's kind of surprised me. One of the main points of my first video on the XP30 was how I use it within Logic Pro with the MIDI multi-instrument environment definition that allows me to change the banks and patches from within Logic. It makes it really effective as a sound source and a great alternative to, a Roland Cloud subscription. And that's one of the reasons I've hung on to it. But there's more love to discuss. First, it's not a bad MIDI controller. It has, the standard 5-pin MIDI connectors on the back, but the keyboard is pretty good. Yeah, it's missing pads and encoders, but it's pretty good. Two, out of all the XP series keyboards, it has the most presets at 1406 plus 28 rhythm presets. And it's a great live performance keyboard because it has large buttons and it's easy to switch parts off and on. And it's I used to use it for performances with 4 to 8 different parts, and it was easy to turn those parts off and on. The classic JV1080 and some other rack units get a lot of attention because they're cheaper, but they only have 600 presets. I was talking about my desire for a 73 or 76 key MIDI controller with one of my friends, and I noticed that anything new is generally made in 48, 61, and maybe 88 keys. There's almost nothing out there that's 73 or 76. And then somebody pointed out that some of the XP models actually have 76 keys. So in that XP range, you've got the XP10, the XP30, which I own, an XP50, which is basically a JV1080 plus a keyboard. And the flagship product at the time was an XP80, which had 76 keys. Roland also had these XV keyboards at the time. There was an XV80, which had 88 keys, and then there were 2 XV rack units. Now, the XP30 is what they call a ROMpler, and I didn't know much about this definition, but essentially, ROMpler, like sampler, except that you can't create your own samples. You have to play the sounds that are in ROM from Roland. And that was attractive at the time because the price point was fairly low, and it was a good way to get a collection of all the most popular Roland sounds at a fairly inexpensive price. There are a lot of other keyboards that fall into this category of ROMpler. Well, I used it extensively. In fact, at the time, the type of music I was playing was a bit industrial and some rock. I went through all the presets quite extensively and identified a lot of sounds that I could use that had an industrial sound. There were some really thick pads, a lot of heavier sounding samples that were fairly aggressive, and it was amazing how much you could do with that one keyboard. So a lot of the pictures I have of bands that I played in at the time, you always see that XP30 kind of sitting underneath. It was very reliable and very durable. So as it turns out, the used market is pretty busy. There are lots of people looking for that particular keyboard. There are some people selling it. After the response I got in that first video, I think it convinced me to keep this thing even longer. I really like the keyboard, and the ease of using it within Logic makes it worth keeping, I would say. If you have opinions on the XP30 that you want to share, put them in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. And if there are other Roland keyboards that you think are equally well built and durable and effective for the studio or for live performance, put that in the comments too, and let's keep this discussion going. I'm Jeffy G. Thanks for tuning in.